Just a few short weeks after its release, Elden Ring has already received its first patch, and you know what, it's kind of a doozy. We've got all the things you would expect from a patch at this stage of the game's life cycle, such as bug fixes, a few performance tweaks, and so on, but in addition to that, FromSoft has also decided to make some massive balance changes to some of the most popular summons, weapons, and more. Let's take a look at some of the biggest changes found in Elden Ring's 1.03 patch. First off, as a quick note, I'm not going to dive into every single change because that would take too long and really, some of them don't merit all that much discussion. But if you're interested, you can find the full list of changes over on Bandai Namco's site, linked in the description. So this is actually kind of crazy, but they added a brand new NPC. His name is Jar Bairn, and he can be found where else in Jarburg, which is located off the cliffside of the Koraya Study Hall. He's a cool little jar boy who acts as an important new step in the quest lines of Dialos and Alexander. In addition to that, new quest steps have been added, including the conclusion of the quest line involving Nephili Lu, Kenneth Height, and Gatekeeper Gostak. So, maybe don't murder him at the start of Stormvale Castle like I totally did. Some of the most powerful tools in Elden Ring got hit with the nerf bat in this new patch, most notably the much talked about Mimic Tear Ash. It's an extremely powerful summon, not only because of the fact that it makes a copy of your character that can use the same weapon and skills that you can, and not only because of the fact that it could actually heal itself, but also because it costs health to summon instead of FP, meaning that any build could use it. Don't worry, it's still pretty strong, but they did reduce its damage and apparently change some of its behavior. In my experience, these changes are pretty minor, and it seems the only real behavioral difference is that it won't take a sip of a health flask when their health runs low. Horfrost Stomp is an Ash of War easily obtainable at pretty much any point in the game, and has been a favorite of speedrunners due to its ability to deal massive damage in AoE cone from a relatively safe distance. The patch has decreased its damage in addition to increasing its cast time, making this a pretty substantial nerf, and one that has certainly impacted the speedrunning community. Bloody Slash is another really powerful early game Ash of War that has gotten hit with a nerf, not only decreasing its damage, but also increasing the damage that it does to you and increasing its cast time. This is a blow to builds that focus on bleed damage, but fortunately, Arcane has always been a weird stat in Elden Ring because it never seemed like adding any points to it affected the damage of certain arcane scaling weapons. And now arcane weapons can do ridiculous damage, on top of also being built around inflicting bleed, which is still one of the more powerful status effects in the game. Mimic Tear, Horfrost Stomp, and Bloody Slash are the big nerfs in this patch, but a couple of other weapons were hit too. The Sword of Night and Flame's weapon skill has had its damage reduced, Barricade Shield now costs more FP and doesn't last as long, and the FP consumption timing of the Prelate's Charge Ash of War has been changed. Not only have the drop rates of smithing stones been increased, but they can now also be bought from various merchants in limited quantities to give you that extra bump that you need in order to upgrade your early game weapons. Smithing stones that you can purchase via the Twin Maiden Husk back at the Round Table Hold have also had their prices slashed. The good old mystery patch note. There's a couple of notable changes though that have already been figured out. For one, everyone's favorite Turtle Shield got nerfed so that it only blocks 87% of physical damage, not 100%. There's a great Reddit thread from user 20 Bare Asses that dives deep into a lot of the more minor changes that they've been able to spot. I'll link it in the description. A wonderful quality of life addition that got added in this patch is the fact that when you find an NPC, it now marks their location on the map. This is great for when you're looking for merchants or when you're able to move on to the next step of a quest, but can't quite remember where the NPC you talked to was. Magic users got a pretty substantial boost to a number of spells that were a bit lacking pre-patch. Gravity Well, Collapsing Stars, and Crystal Barrage now have better damage. Star Shower, Rock Blaster, Gavel of Haima, Founding Rain of Stars, Stars of Ruin, Great Blade Phalanx, Magic Downpour, Loretta's Great Bow, Loretta's Mastery, Crying Greatsword, Crying Piercer, and Shard Spiral all have decreased FP consumption, and the speed and range of Great Glintstone Shard have been increased. And that covers the biggest changes of the Elden Ring version 1.03 patch. What do you think of the patch? Let us know in the comments, and if you want more Elden Ring, we've got a lore explainer on what the Elden Ring even is, a guide recommending which class you should play, and of course, our full review. And as always, for everything else, keep it here on IGN.